Today on the show, get a load of this wedding reception. St. Albert brings the and crosses the streams. Whew. Looking back on Pope John Paul II's letter to families, our picks of the week, and so much more. They Got the Underground starts now. What happens when I don't check my own spelling? It is time for the Catholic Underground. We are the podcast that tries to cut through the noise and find the topics that matter for you. We want to bring them to you so that you can do with them what you will. It's episode number 410. I'm Father Chris Decker. Joining me this week, Kathleen Lee, the executive director of the Women's New Life Clinic in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Hey, Kathleen.
Hey.
By the way, she's back.
I'm back.
That's right. Yeah. For those of you who are maybe intermittently watching the show, she never left.
I didn't.
No. Also, Olivia Gulino, she's the student of life, our resident Italian food critic. Hey, Olivia.
Hello.
Also, if we go up to the Satellite of Hope, the Jeff Star 1, we will find Jeff Blackwell always sitting behind the controls, doing what he always does. Hey, Jeff.
Oh, you're back.
That's right.
Hey, Father. We're doing good.
Had a microphone malfunction here on Earth, but it's okay. We're good. And then also, if you're watching us on the video feed on Facebook and all around, we got Ed running all those graphics and stuff. So It looks good. Great. Sounds good. It's Jeff. All right. Okay. Now, this is probably one of the coolest things that I've seen in quite a while. This is from the Warm Your Heart Desk, Ephesians 5 tray.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We monitor that 24 hours a day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. So a beautiful, beautiful thing. Catholic speaker, podcaster, and television personality Stacey Summerow shared an experience that she had at her wedding reception with her husband, and the post went viral, and we couldn't help but share it here. So instead of throwing a garter, right, which is like something that happens at almost every wedding reception that I've ever been to, her husband washed her feet. So Summerow explained that the garter toss signifies eros. So we've got the three loves in Greek understanding, right? Philia, agape, and eros. Eros would be, I wouldn't say necessarily. Well, they're all components of love, but it is basically sexual attraction.
Yeah.
And then like the little public hint of the private intimacy that the newlyweds will enjoy.
Yeah.
And so she says because it signifies eros, her husband chose something different. Her husband washed her feet because it signifies a different type of love, agape, the sacrificial love of Jesus. Jesus washed his disciples' feet the night before he gave his life on the cross, and husbands vow to love their brides like Christ loves the church, which, by the way, look it up, guys, Ephesians chapter 5. The leader of the family is to be a servant. So here's the whole full text of the post. We thought we'd read it along here.
Yeah.
My husband washed my feet at our wedding reception instead of tossing a garter. The garter toss signifies eros, sexual attraction, and the hint of the intimacy that the newlyweds will enjoy. Physical attraction is a wonderful and beautiful part of the marriage. However, I love that my groom chose to surprise me with something different. And that's exactly what he did. He says, the beautiful thing is you don't got to worry one tiny bit about erotic love disappearing when you work for agape love. Because that's exactly what happens. He says that, she said that whether it's prioritizing my desire of where we go out to dinner or getting up with the babies early when I'm exhausted, John always lays down his life for me every day. So often our culture gets it backwards, to test drive or to try before you buy, to cohabit. She says, but now that I'm living marriage day to day, I see that sustaining a relationship purely with eros is like trying to live on cake. The sweetness can disappear in an instant, but it's working together that lasts. She says, we didn't need to try before you buy to have both the depth of agape and the sweetness of eros together. I don't feel in love every second of every day, and anyone who expects that is going to be disappointed. But I trust my husband, and I feel secure, and feel security in his love that allows for joy and laughter and a peaceful relationship. She's also on a podcast called Called and Caffeinated, which sounds like a very good one to listen to. Says, single friends, don't buy that what the culture is selling you. You deserve to be cherished, not just for a time, but forever. Let's all pray for the strength to love sacrificially. And you know, she actually brings about something in my own mind that I don't know that I've put together. But the whole try before you buy culture is really not based upon agape, the sacrificial love. it's based upon eros, and kind of a loose understanding of philia, which is the love that friends have for one another. But it can't be, that philia can't be completed if it's eros that's leading it. You know, and I find that very interesting. And so what do you think of this as kind of a new Catholic trend at a wedding reception?
Yeah, I think it's really cool. You know, most weddings that I've been to have been religious based, mostly Catholic, and most other ones, you know, of other denominations, some kind of religious based ceremony. Yeah. And it's always a weird thing when you go and it's like, and Jesus, and it's all about this, you know, we love each other, you know, in the eyes of God and all this kind of stuff. And then you go to the reception and it's like, what kind of music are we? What?
That's right. Yeah.
Like, this is bizarre.
I don't think that the maestro Limp Bizkit really captures the agape of the moment. Yes.
Yeah.
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 So I just picked one at random. I'm not saying. Yeah.
So I mean, I think it's really cool.
Yeah. That's what was in like the fore of your cerebrum at the moment.
It wasn't in the foyer. It was in the back.
The foyer.
Where everything lives in the storeroom.
The foyer.
Anyway, but yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So I think it's really kind of a beautiful thing that the wedding reception reflects in some way the liturgy that we've just experienced. So there's not a disconnect.
Well, because there's a celebration of the liturgy, and then there's the celebration afterwards, and it doesn't make sense to celebrate in two different ways.
That's right. Yeah, and I think that in a sense can also give perhaps a bad representation of what we as Catholics are about.
Right.
Because we do get a lot of bad press of like, you Catholics, you drink at these events. Well, yeah, but there's more to it as well, and none of us, Catholic or not, are called to drink in excess. You know, that's when it becomes an overreach of enjoying one another's company. Philia, true philios, right? Desiring the friendship of those who are accompanying us into this new life that my spouse and I are sharing together. So to see this kind of connection doesn't mean you have to be a Puritan at a wedding reception either. You should be having fun. Right. You should be laughing. I would dare say that a wedding reception is also time for slightly irreverent things, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's just who we are as people.
Revelry.
Yeah, a bit of revel, right? But at the same time, we are never supposed to be completely far away from the feasts of the church, which are never divorced from Christ ever.
Yeah. Right. Well, and I feel like I always was kind of shocked by the garter toss, and it was always like the most uncomfortable part of a wedding for me. That's usually when I would like go to the bathroom because I'm just like, I don't
need to
this.
be somewhere else.
I don't need this in my life, and you probably don't either. But I think something that I want to highlight is that eros is not a bad thing.
No, right.
And in fact, choosing to reserve something which is that passionate love, choosing to reserve that for a setting that's intimate is actually doing justice to what eros is and what it's supposed to be, right? Eros is supposed to serve love, right? It's a type of love. You need it, right? But it's not supposed to be, like put on a pedestal, like for everyone to see, right?
Right.
And so like, I like that there's this kind of union or this realization that like, okay, well, all of the parts of love, all of the aspects of love have their moment, right? But what are we choosing to highlight about this particular moment where we're like coming together in a sacrament, right?
That's right. And something too that's public from the first moment to the last moment until we get into the car on our honeymoon, you know. And I know behind Olivia on the screen, for those of you who are watching on the radio, you actually see kind of a beautiful moment of eros, philia, and agape coming together as Summer is kissing the head of her husband as he is taking her shoe off to put it into the bowl to wash her feet. And that's the beauty of it is there can be an extension, if you will, kind of a sneak preview of the eros that my bride and I will share. But whenever it's publicly on display, it has to be ordered, as you say, with the other two loves. Yeah. You might need to do a little research with C.S. Lewis as well. The Four Loves is one of his great books, kind of breaking out some of those sorts of things.
Even Benedict too, of course. But no, Benedict too does a lot to like
Pope
rescue.
Benedict.
Sorry, Pope Benedict. We're very close.
The 16th.
He does a lot to rescue eros and kind of like put it in conversation again with agape. Like what is it? Deus Caritas Est is his God is love. I really recommend that one because he spends a lot of time kind of I feel like he's like a surgeon, kind of like stitching up the wound of Eros, because we just don't understand it anymore. And so he spends a lot of like the first part of that encyclical, which was the first encyclical that he wrote as Pope, just like doing that handiwork, that very like neat and very precise handiwork of like rescuing what Eros is, but then putting it in conversation with, okay, who is God?
Right. Yeah. Right. Because philosophically, Eros needs to be rehabilitated in our world, you know. And so this wedding reception kind of paraliturgy, you know, is a beautiful way, I think, to do that, to give all the people at the wedding reception an opportunity to say, what is this?
Yeah.
As I said at a funeral the other day, because I knew it was Catholics and non-Catholics. And, you know, Catholics are weird. we do these things that people always ask questions about. And everybody says they're just weird, but they're never without an explanation. They're never without not just a reason, but a deep reason.
Yeah.
And so, how beautiful would it be to go to a wedding reception and see something like this?
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. you know? It's interesting. The Seventh-day Adventists, the washing of the feet is a sacrament for them.
Really?
Yeah. Because it's a deep kind of beautiful entering into a moment where Christ is doing something important. You know, the mandatum, as we say in Latin, the so must you do also.
Yeah.
And so it really kind of works for us as a sacramental, something that points towards the Eucharistic sacrifice and points towards agape, towards service, sacrificial service.
Yeah, I've had my feet washed before, and it is as someone who is like a doer of things. Yeah. You know, if you it was at a leadership retreat, and it was one of the hardest things to have done for me. Yeah. Like I wanted to go to the bathroom. I wanted to I can do everybody's, it's fine. But like to sit down and have it done to you is
it's true.
Because it's so humbling.
And it's intimate too. That's the thing. Yeah. It is intimate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's like, oh my gosh.
Just like in Jesus' time, the feet are not things that people enjoy presenting publicly, you know. Right. And I know it's one of the most, for me as a pastor, it's one of the most moving things that I do on Holy Thursday is to take up the mandatum of the Lord and to wash the feet of those who serve in my parish. And it's an intimate moment. It always, I cry like a baby the whole time. I feel like the woman washing Jesus' feet with her tears because I'm sitting there crying as I'm washing their feet, because to be able to serve the servants of my parish is it's a great honor. And so to see that alive in the 5th chapter of Ephesians in sacramental marriage by way of this sacramental is beautiful. Which, by the way, I should explain. A sacramental is a symbol or an action that points towards, or an object that points towards the sacraments, right? So a blessed medal, a sacred action like the washing of the feet, something like that. We call them sacramentals because they point towards a sacrament. They point towards the Eucharist or towards baptism or something. And so Catholics are encouraged to use sacramentals because they're those kind of like those tuning forks for us to make sure that we're on the right pitch, headed in the right direction. Yeah. Which, Jeff, you gonna wash Diane's feet when you get home?
Every night. What are you talking about?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize this is just a regular thing for y'all. Yeah, because Jeff is filled with agape. Let me tell you.
That's true.
Well, the woman works hard. I'll just put it that way. So
that's true. Well, I mean,
sweet.
And you're still together. How many years has it been, Jeff?
Well, let's see. It was.
Okay, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. It's been a while.
Coming up on 46. Yeah.
46. That's fantastic. Yeah, Jeff. That Jeff. He's going to be Employee of the Month next month.
Oh, that Diane.
I tell you. Yeah, Diane's great too. If you haven't met Jeff Blackwell's wife, we'll have to get her up on the satellite, I hope, one day. Yeah. Up on the Jeff Star one, so you can see
it. Yeah.
Yeah, we should. All right. So think of it. Let us know if you do this at your wedding. If it happens to any of the people that are on the Catholic Underground, I'm sure we'll hear about it. But what you should know now is that we are the Catholic Underground. Yeah, I'm playing on my phone here, and you found the Catholic Underground. You're listening to it, you're watching it. We're online at CatholicUnderground.tv. The reason I'm playing on my phone is because I'm live in the chat. So if you watch us on Sunday evenings on Facebook or wherever fine video is streamed, you can get to us in the Facebook chat, and so we interact with you as we're able. Yeah. Sometimes I'm chatting, talking, so I can't be in the chat room, but still. Anyway, Kathleen's here. Yep. Olivia's here. Jeff's here. Ed's here. And our picks of the week are coming up. But first, Saint Albert the Great
Yes.
doesn't get a whole lot of press these days.
No, poor guy.
But let me tell you, like he was quite a magnanimous personality.
Yes.
We usually reserve that for Thomas Aquinas,
Right.
but he brought together a lot of things that we think are enemies today.
Yes. And if you're wondering why St. Albert the Great and St. Thomas Aquinas are mentioned in the same sentence, it's because St. Thomas Aquinas was a student of St. Albert the Great.
Oh yes, the
And so
student has become
all
the
these-
teacher.
Yes. And so all these things that we know about St. Thomas Aquinas, and not to say that St. Albert the Great was the reason, but this guy taught St. Thomas
Yeah.
Aquinas. And so
Like think about your
Kinda.
favorite teacher, and
Yeah.
whenever you begin to teach yourself, and you go, oh, I
Right.
just said that thing. Was that was Miss So and So? Yeah.
Yeah.
mhm.
Now we know that St. Thomas Aquinas is arguably one of the greatest theologians who ever lived. If you've never read any parts of the Summa or anything that he's written or taken Thomistic philosophy, which
What are
I
you
did,
waiting for?
you should. I mean, it's phenomenal stuff. But in our efforts to honor the student Aquinas, right, let us not forget his teacher, St. Albert.
That's right.
So renowned was St. Albert as one of the great respected scholars of his age that during his lifetime itself, he was already being honored with the title great.
That's
So this
usually
wasn't-
something reserved
Right.
for after you die.
So it finally, like, after you die, they give you some kind of title.
Like John
right?
Paul the Great.
John Paul the Great.
Father Chris the lazy.
Right? And they look at your whole life, right? And they kind of sum it up with,
Father Chris the perpetually fatigued.
that's
There
what I
we go.
wish, like, when they have like
You're not
lords
allowed
and
to give
ladies
yourself titles.
Oh,
and
right,
knights,
okay.
lords and ladies and knights, like, like what would yours be? That would be a very interesting thing to think about. But it usually comes after your death. This guy, while he was living, people were calling him
Lady
that.
Kathleen of the pet care.
Okay.
You could literally see his mind working while you were talking. Like, I'm gonna say it. I'm going to say
I
it.
did. I
Here
said
it comes.
Sorry, I'm
Now.
I'm taking us off the course.
I can turn his mic off if you like,
Please
Kathleen.
do.
Yeah.
Please do.
Saint Albert the Great.
St. Albert the Great made numerous contributions to the fields of science and philosophy. He's credited with helping formulate a systematic study of minerals. Hello, all those ladies out there who are using mineral oils on your faces and stuff. Thank you, St. Albert the Great. You're welcome. And at a time when most of what was known about the natural sciences came from ancient classical texts, St. Albert.
not helpful.
Yes. Yeah. And everybody was like, what? Who's saying all this? St. Albert studied plants and animals and supplemented what was known about them with his own research. So he was in real time kind of updating all of this classical text on the natural sciences.
My goodness.
Yeah. So, in fact, on account of the vastness of his expertise and knowledge in the fields of philosophy, theology, physics, chemistry, astronomy, mineralogy, botany, zoology, and so on, Pope Pius XII named him the patron saint of scientists. I would hope so.
Yeah, he had his thumb in a lot of pies, as it were.
Yeah. And he's like, look at all these things that I'm involved in, and Pope Pius XII says, "You're patron saint of bakers," and he's like, "What the heck?"
But it really is quite something because we see in Saint Albert kind of the beauty of how the Lord is trying to lift up the gifts and talents that we have.
Exactly.
Because the reason he's the patron saint of scientists is because he looked at the world around him and went, I have to understand this.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I want to, because I'm a Christian, I want to see how what God has made interfaces with what I can know about this.
Yeah.
That's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
Well,
and-
and I'm sorry, I was just
Okay.
gonna add, like, and historically, like, that's what philosophy was, right? That's why you have philosophers who are like him, like, were also scientists. But then you have people like coming more into the Enlightenment period who, like Leibniz was a philosopher, but he's the one who perpetuated calculus, right? They are involved with a lot of different, even Descartes, like, he was a philosopher, but he also like contributed a lot to like
Sure.
mathematics and stuff. So like, this is not unusual, but he took it to like a next level, right?
Yeah, and so you would think some of these areas, it's very easy to get bogged down in the world around St. Albert, right? But he was always studying the things of this world with an eye on things from above, right? St. Albert was among the forerunners in concretely explaining the relationship between faith on one hand and philosophy, reason, and the sciences on the other, which is still being not discovered, but kind of worked through today.
Vilified, actually, in many
you know,
ways. But it's interesting that he began this work in all these different disciplines, but really was Thomas Aquinas who took it to the next level,
Right.
Kind of learning at the feet of his teacher,
Right.
Bringing in Greek philosophy and saying, so this is what Albert must have been talking about, you know?
Yeah. It's very interesting to see, you know, how I had a professor in college, Dr. Chris Baglow, who wrote a textbook on faith and reason and science, and you know how the two have to go hand in hand. And he would share with us some of the stuff that he's writing about, and I was like, golly, like it's so easy to split the two, you know, of the natural world of of chemistry and math and all this kind of stuff, and you know the spiritual world. But really to see how those two go together. And there's a Catholic author, Kevin Vost, wrote in a biography that he's writing about St. Albert. He said, for Albert, there was never conflict between science and religion, faith and reason, the material and the spiritual realms. For him, the whole world was theology because the heavens proclaimed the glory of God. Right. So for St. Albert, this was, the natural world was just evidence of God. Right, of the glory of God, of God's creation, and he, made the connection between the two. Now, while his main approach to science was empirical, meaning that he tested his scientific theories by observing things in the world around him. It's all about observation. Now, keep in mind that the 13th century scientific studies lacked the kind of laboratories that we see today that they're using, and the equipment that we have that can, what are these proton
split atoms?
Yeah, ridiculousness that we have going on.
Collide.
Now, they didn't have all of that in the 13th century, right? So he once wrote, in studying nature, we have not to inquire how God, the creator, may, as he freely wills, use his creatures to work miracles and thereby show forth his power. We have rather to inquire what nature with its imminent inherent causes can naturally bring to pass. Right? And so, I mean, the leaps and bounds that this guy was making without digital anything, without a designated lab space somewhere, probably in his basement in a candlelit, with magnifying glass. I don't know, like.
You're painting a good picture for us there, because that's the thing. And it's really interesting that he is able to practice what we would essentially call the scientific process here, the scientific method. Because he's saying, we don't have to inquire how God can do what he wills, because God will do that. God will create miracles as he needs. But we want to inquire about nature, what nature naturally brings to pass with itself. And so not to bracket God, because he's not, but saying, well, let's see what we can observe about this, and then kind of make the ladder, make the climb to God.
Exactly.
Well, that's something that Thomas Aquinas himself takes up too, because Aquinas has his 5 proofs of God, just using what you can observe in nature. And it's essential for coming to a deeper understanding of God, is realizing that you can know things about God just by observing nature. That's right. You can't know everything.
Which, by the way, your students love that class.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how their papers turned out, but
that was fun for me.
Yeah, so like I was saying, even in our modern times, St. Albert's influence has continued to hold sway in the discussion of relationship between faith and reason. So for instance, both Pope St. John Paul II and Pope Benedict XVI, they both recognized this great St. Albert as being among the first to recognize that philosophy and the sciences needed to be viewed distinctly from theology if they were to perform well in their respective fields of research. So Pope Benedict XVI said, St. Albert the Great reminds us that there is friendship between science and faith, and that through their vocation to the study of nature, scientists can take an authentic and fascinating path of holiness. Now, in today's world, that's kind of we see a huge disconnect. A huge disconnect.
A holy scientist?
Yeah. And there are a lot of people who are faithful people who discover science and discover, maybe, one of the sciences, and they lose all of their religion,
they just leave it.
Their faith, right?
They leave the practice of their religion.
Yeah, because they can't connect the two.
Well, because they think that they found another religion, a superior religion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, from a Christian thought perspective, is St. Albert's commentary on the entire corpus, or the entire body of Aristotelian, I like that word, philosophy that is most noteworthy. The very fact that he studied and explained Aristotelian philosophy was radical and revolutionary in the 13th century. People were not talking about this. I love somebody who's radical and revolutionary, right? Most Christian thinkers during that time in history were suspicious of Aristotle's philosophy because of its pagan roots, right? However, St. Albert explained that when something is truly rational, it is compatible with Christian teachings as revealed in the scriptures. Right? So he's taking something, this logic and this reason and this rationale, and he's saying for it to, if it's truly this way, it's totally compatible with Christian thought and Christian teaching as revealed in the scriptures. Right? So St. Albert's witness stands out most profoundly because he demonstrated that as much as theological studies that delve into the deepest mysteries of our faith are distinct from the study of philosophy and the natural sciences, the two go hand in hand, forming a part of man's thirst for truth, happiness, and ultimately God himself, right? This desire for us to know truth, right? For us to know what is real, that can be seen in the sciences, right? Through God. Right, through God himself. And so in the words of Pope Benedict XVI, he says, how many scientists, in fact, in the wake of St. Albert the Great, have carried on their research inspired by wonder at and gratitude for a world which, to their eyes as scholars and believers, appeared and appears as the good work of a wise and loving creator. Scientific study is then transformed into a hymn of praise.
Yep.
So as we were studying the way that God created us to be, like God didn't create like all these things, for us to discover, and then he'd be like, oopsies, they found me out, know?
No, right. And then he vanishes in a puff of logic.
Yeah.
No.
He as we discover these beauties of nature, the way that God created things to work. Yeah. It's a revelation of God himself.
That's right. They don't point back to themselves. They point beyond themselves.
Right. And how beautiful. It transformed into a hymn of praise. Right.
Which is why we can actually talk about, in a sense, the sacramentality of nature. Right. Because it points beyond itself back to God.
Absolutely.
Oh, we could just keep on St. Albert here. But we got to go. We'll be right back after a second. So stay with us. Catholic Underground. Hail, Holy Queen, Mother of Mercy, our life, our sweetness, and our hope. To thee do we cry, poor banished children of Eve. To thee do we send up our sighs, mourning and weeping in this valley of tears. Turn then, most gracious Advocate, thine eyes of mercy towards us, and after this our exile, show unto us the blessed fruit of thy womb, Jesus. O clement, O loving, O sweet Virgin Mary. Welcome back. We found the Catholic Underground with me, Father Chris Decker, Kathleen Lee, Olivia Gulino, Ed Ball, and Jeff Blackwell are up in space.
Yes, I like that air farfisa you had going there, Father.
Well, I figured I was playing it right. Whenever it's on the air, you can do whatever you want, right? So, anyway,
Big finish here.
Yeah. There we are. Yeah, cool, yeah. Our picks of the week are coming up. But we wanted to spend a little bit of time. So at the top of the show, we talked about the beauty of marriage. Kathleen talked about how science and faith all come together. Yep. And so we figured we'd give a little bit of time to Pope St. John Paul II. 25 years on, this year was kind of the 25th anniversary, if you will, of his letter to families. And again, trying to aim for this synthesis of all of these things. And so we thought we'd just kind of crack open that letter a little bit. The Catholic News Agency started that, so we figured we'd kind of open up their mind grapes.
Yeah, crush those mind grapes. So I feel like in the recent couple of years, we've been celebrating a lot of crucial anniversaries of different encyclicals and just things, you know what I mean? Like with
like tens and
Humana
fives.
Vitae, Humana Vitae. I think the letter to women celebrated a similar anniversary. So now it's the letter to families. And I think that's a really pertinent reminder, something for us to come back to. Like that's what anniversaries kind of force us to do, is to revisit things, right? You maybe reread these things or read them for the first time, and you're like, oh, okay, like that was really pertinent then, but even more so now.
We do that with books too, right?
Yeah.
We have favorite books that we read every year or every few years to kind of reacquaint ourselves with that.
Yeah.
And it
Persuasion.
should be, it is indeed, it should be no different with the
churchy
encyclicals,
things.
with churchy things.
Yeah. And just in case you're thinking to yourself, like, I mean, like, this is nice, I'll listen to that, but I'm never going to read that. You should, right? So these letters they're not as like, they're literally meant for you. Just like encyclicals are meant, I mean, they're meant for mainly bishops, but they're accessible reading. Maybe some other things in the church might seem more intimidating, and very well are, but things like letters and encyclicals are meant for you. So like when we say that like the Pope has written a letter to families, we don't just mean that the Pope wrote each bishop or each cardinal a letter about families. No, he's writing to families. Like the letter to women, he writes to women, and he speaks
not just
to
Italian
women.
speaking ones.
Yeah.
He's writing to all families.
To all families, right? And so Pope John Paul II, as you are, I'm sure, are well and familiar, was born Karol Wojtyła, and he was from this small town in Poland. But his family life is actually really interesting because he lost everyone in his immediate family before the age of, I think it was 20, right? So his mom died when he was very young. He had a sister, I think it was a sister or a brother who was miscarried like before he was born. And then I think his brother died when he was a young boy. And then, so it was him and his dad for a very long time. And then, his dad eventually died when he was kind of a young man. And so, but like their family life, even just in that short span of time, and for a lot of the time it was just him and his dad, but that their family life, father and son, was like enough of a threshing field for him to cultivate the vocation of a priest. And so he does become a priest. He eventually becomes the Pope, right? And as the Pope, he's writing this letter to families in 1994. And that was one of the United Nations declared that as the year of the family. And so it's kind of the context in which John Paul II is writing, but this also fits with all of his other corpus of writings, right? Because at this point he's already finished his theology of the body. He's starting to write, I think it was in 94 too, right? The Mulieris Dignitatem.
I believe that was the same year. There is a continuity to all of his writings. And of course, as a phenomenologist,
right,
he's always writing about the human person.
Right. That's his focus, is the human person. And not just the human person like per se, but the human person connected to the person of Christ, right? Because I think, wasn't his first encyclical Redemptor Hominis, the redemption of man, the redeemer of man, which is Christ, right? Christ is our redeemer, but he redeems you, right? He doesn't just come to redeem humanity, and he does, but he comes to redeem you as an individual person, as an instantiation of the person that you are created to be.
That's right. And by the way, if you want the blueprint for his pontificate, that's the way to start.
Yeah.
Always read the first encyclical of the Pope.
Which is why when I talked about Deus Caritas Est earlier, it was Pope Benedict's first encyclical. Like it gives light to all of his pontificate. So go read that as well. You have so much reading to do from me. But we got to think about the context, right? So in the time that he's writing, the U.S. divorce rates were actually higher than they are now. Or, compared to the most recent available data. So at that time, it was about 4.6 per 1,000 people, compared now to 2.9 in 2017. But you got to keep in mind, too, that marriage rates were also higher then, right? About 9.1 compared with 6.9 for those same years. We also have different issues now that we didn't have back then, right? So legalized same-sex marriage was still considered kind of a taboo thing. Maybe, no one ever thought that it would really happen. But now, obviously, we have that to contend with.
Which, by the way, marriage not possible.
Yes.
Between those of same-sex attraction.
Exactly. So we have a lot of different realities to contend with in 2019, almost 2020. But this letter is still completely pertinent to the here and now, this message to families. You might be thinking to yourself too, like, well, what does a celibate priest and eventually Pope have to say about me and my family life? And this is something where, like, if you look at his pontificate, this is like what he devoted himself to, was understanding marriage and understanding the family. Love and responsibility is about recapturing eros, like we've been talking about, but how to fit that into what marriage is as a sacrament. And then he capitalizes on that in Theology of the Body and expands on it to like a mind-blowing degree. But everything in his pontificate is about rescuing marriage and the family. And so this kind of is almost like a crown on top of the work that he's done up until this point. But he also just in his life, he was a chaplain while he was a university, while he was a professor at a university, and he spent time with his students, and he kind of like not followed them, that sounds weird, but like through their life as they got married and had children, he stayed close with them, yeah, right. And he took them on camping trips and just different different things to kind of stay involved in their life, but also to learn from them. Like when he wrote Love and Responsibility, it said that he like kind of pitched it to this group of students, and they helped him say like, no, this is not accurate, yes this is, and here's another way of saying it, right? He really like was humble and open to that one kind of experiential poverty that he had, but it doesn't mean that he has a poverty of understanding. And so he was really able to support these young families, to help them live their faith at a time when the communist society was trying to undermine the family, right? So even in maybe a way that we're familiar with, right? Society was not supporting the family at all, but he was doing what he could to not only learn from them, but to provide a basis of support for them. And so while the Communist Party, like we said, did rule Poland, it meant that families' work and school schedules were arranged in such a way as they spent as little time together as possible, right? That's what we mean by not supporting the family. And so it was the state and not the family, according to the government, because the state was like the ultimate good, the end of society, right? It wasn't the family, right? The family served the state, not the state serving the family. But the reality is that government, right, in its original forms and its original intentions, is meant to serve the people, right? But what it becomes, and what the temptation is most lived out in real ways in like the Communist Party and the communist regimes, is that the family, the individual, the work of the family and the individual, and just their existence, it starts to be geared towards the state, and so it becomes this master-slave scenario. And so really what John Paul II was doing as Karol Wojtyła, right, he was really just in this battle for family life. And that's really what he devoted himself to in his pontificate, and not just communism, but communism specifically as a war against the family. Yeah. Because, I mean, if you listen to the messages coming out of Fatima, right, that's the last battle, right, is against marriage and the family. And John Paul II knew that. Whenever humanity, whenever man and woman become devalued, and that certainly can happen in an atheistic regime, then it becomes very easy for us to devalue everything else in society. Because if Christ is the center around which all things rotate, if you will, right? Christ and his cross, and if it is Christ, as we say in Gaudium et Spes, I believe number 23, if it is Christ who reveals man to himself, if it is Christ who is the center of everything, whenever we devalue man, we even empty the cross of its meaning. We empty Christ of his meaning. And so then we can just kind of put ourselves in there and obliterate everything else. And so you can see Pope John Paul II had a good reason for taking on, if you will, this burden of kind of rehabilitating the family, because that was, dare I say, one of the fallouts of the First World War. Certainly was the fallout of the Second as well. Yeah, and so in this letter to families, we see how John Paul is recognizing all this, and like Father Chris was saying, like the context is very important. So he's identifying not the individual, not me kind of bolstering my own self, my own ego, my own will, as the thing that's going to make it for me, make it happen for me, make my life what I think that it should be. But he says that the family is the pathway to holiness. Yep. And this is something that at this point in history is really being lost, or it's at least being chiseled away at. And so in this letter, he says that the family is placed at the heart of the great struggle between good and evil, between life and death, between love and all that's opposed to love, right? And that's really, I mean, he does this in Theology of the Body when he goes back to the garden in his first kind of Act 1 his catechesis on the theology of the body, right? He goes back to the garden and he looks at that first interaction of sin between Adam and Eve. And what really happens is their family life is deteriorating, right? And that lets in the possibility of sin, right? Because Eve takes her eye off of Adam and starts looking at something she starts looking at something that seems appealing, right? And Adam doesn't say anything, right? So their roles, his role is to be a protector, to be the authority, right? But to be the protector, the one who guards the garden. And the garden is not just a physical place; it's Eve, right? Eve is the garden. And he fails to protect the garden. That's his job. He's the gardener.
He had one job.
Right? But her role is to be the help for salvation, right? To be the one who not only leads him to salvation, but who makes it possible, right? Who continues to draw him closer in love to God the Father. And what she does is she draws him closer to the self. And that's not what the garden was originally set up to be for them. Anyway, so John Paul II is really highlighting that in this letter, and he says that the key to building up a civilization of love is the family. Right? And that civilization of love should be a place where families are able to give and receive love, both at individual, but also at societal levels. And that's really, I think, the key part. Like I think we're starting to see this like genesis, this renaissance in being able to give and receive love on an individual level, because you have these different kind of movements happening that support families, especially in the church, but also you kind of see it happening on a bit of a secular level, like people realizing that I read an article the other day about how like population rates are dipping below whatever what is it called, like the birth rate is dipping below like basically, and it's not
the
replacing
sustainable
itself.
Family or the sustainable human sustainability threshold or whatever. Like
basically like the population is not replacing itself, right? It's dipping below what is possible for a society in whatever place this is to be able to continue. And so people are recognizing that as a crisis now. And so even on a governmental level, you start having these ways of supporting family life. But it's that societal piece that sometimes is missing, right? Especially in just the way that we live, right? I remember talking to a friend of mine who taught in South Korea for a while, and she would be like in a coffee shop at like 9:00 at night when we would be Skyping, and she would say like, she would just comment on whatever's happening, and she would say one time, I remember one time she said that there were like school children going home, and it was like 9:00 at night where she was, and I was like, why are they going home at 9:00 at night? And she's like, they've been at school since 6.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? Which says something about like the drive for education, but it also says something about like, when do these kids see their parents, right? When do they spend time with their families? And the reality is they don't, right? They just don't. And I, the kind of reality too is that, teachers spend a lot of time with their students, right? And sometimes that's more than the time that the kids spend with their families, with their parents, right? And so it's on that societal level that we have to look at, okay, how are we actually supporting the family, or do we do what we can to kind of, or do we do what we can to combat that like fissure of the family, right? Do we support fusion rather than fission? And that's where this document, this letter to families, is kind of a cry from the heart to suggest an antidote. Yeah, exactly. And so we have to realize that and this is John Paul II's point, is that the vast majority of people become holy as husband and father and as wife and mother, and not in spite of that. So what do we do in the church? What do we do as a society to support that, right? To support that mission of the family, of the husband and wife sanctifying each other and thus sanctifying their family. Right, because it is a mission properly understood, right? Exactly. A mission is being sent out from somewhere to do something. Yeah. And so it's really kind of, it's prophetic in a way what John Paul is saying. I mean, because 25 years maybe doesn't seem like a long time, but that's a generation and a half. And it's prophetic because it really touches on all these ways that the family is under attack today. And he says that, this might be his most famous line from this letter. He says that the history of mankind, the history of salvation, passes by way of the family, right? Look at the situation that Jesus is born into. Jesus could have come as an adult man, right? He's God. He didn't need to come as a baby. He chooses to come as a baby, right? And he chooses to be born in a family situation, right? And it's the love of the family that he spends the majority of his life, right? If you look at just statistically speaking, how much of Jesus's life he spends just living a family life, it's the majority, right? And it's a vast majority of his life, which shows that there's something in the family that is necessary. It's not contingent, it's not something accidental, and it's not something that it's just optional, right? Of this list of things in our lives we can do away with in favor of something else. No, the family is essential, right? And so this letter is prophetic, you could say, because what we're seeing is that when it comes to the way that we view the family, just practically speaking, we don't really have hope for the future, right? Because we don't invest in, as a society, in our families, right? And what do? We have to think about, what do we do as the church to support families and really support them, not just kind of like give them a nod every now and then, right? Do we create environments that provide for the future, not just for the present moment? So I think that John Paul II was already recognizing that the foundation of society itself is already in jeopardy if people are not getting married, if they're not having kids, right? They're saying no to the future in some sense. So how do we, as a society, as a church, help people to say yes, right?
Which we're seeing, by the way, not that people aren't having children, but what we're seeing is that outside of the sacrament of marriage, children can be viewed oftentimes as objects. You know, they're cute when they're babies, but then all of a sudden life kicks in, and when you don't have the strength of the sacrament, what begins to happen is there's a fracture point, and the fracture point is always what happens where the kids are caught in the middle in the fissure, and they are the ones who fall through the canyon that is created because of the lack of sacramental grace, and it devalues the entire. I mean, I see it. Gosh, I see it as a priest, and it devalues the entire family because nobody sees each other as a person. And this is where the lawsuits come in, and this is where the tug of war with the kids begins, and that's where Pope John Paul II is saying, how can we say yes to family life? And yes to everything, the graces that can flow from this. And
I think it comes first with just recognizing that, like, everything is for the sake of the family, right? Instead of the family for the sake of everything else, right? Like, are we all like going our own 1,000 separate ways and then coming back and kind of like taking a breath and then going out all our own separate ways? Or do we do whatever we do in our individual time for the sake of what happens in the home, right? And so it takes a change of mind, a change of culture, and I think it starts with the family culture, right? Like what does Mother Teresa said? She says, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family, right? And so do we start in the home with just intentionally building a culture of the civilization of love, right? Does everything that we do in our life come back to what we do in the home? And even if you're living like a single life, right? Does everything that you do, is it aimed for the betterment of your own holiness, of the holiness of the people that you love, right? Are you starting even now to create a culture of love that God willing, one day will involve a family of your own, right? What do you do in order to cultivate that civilization here and now? Because it's moment to moment. It's not like 10 years from now we'll have the civilization. No, it's right now. Are you making a choice for that civilization? And so it comes down to living a life of personal holiness as a husband, as a father, as a mother, as a wife, as a child, right? And do we focus our life on prayer, right? Do we realize that everything that if we are breathing, if we have existence coursing through our veins, that we are children, right? And we are children of God. So do we first go to that primordial family, and then allow that to inform what we do in our human families, right? And realize that it's for the sake of that primordial family, that marriage to God, that beatitude that we're all working towards, that we even have human families, right? Because God wills it that way, number one, but also because we have to realize that like our human family is not just like a way to waste time until we get to heaven, right? Or something to keep us occupied, right?
It's not the thing that's not the TV. Right.
Like, I think it's Joseph Pieper who says that, God's love needs perfection, right? And it needs perfection because he chooses it that way, right? Because God is all perfect. But he says that God has so willed love in such a way that it needs perfection in human love, right? So in the love of a husband for his wife, and for a wife for her husband, and the love of their family, that perfects God's love here and now.
Which, by the way, is an outpouring of Ephesians 5.
Yeah.
Right. It's also kind of a Philippians 2 thing too, where Christ learns obedience through what he suffers. He learns to love in his humanity, and it is perfected by submitting himself to something greater than himself.
Yeah.
You know, and that is kind of at the core of how Pope St. John Paul II shows us the family must recover that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's an urgent situation too. We can't. I think that we're at the point where we can't really ignore like how urgent of a situation it is to rescue the family, but realizing that the antidote starts in just simplicity, right? There's not going to be a program that's going to save it. There's not going to be one person that's going to come and save it other than Jesus. It's going to be moment to moment, and it's going to be a cultural change that's going to shift things, right?
Yeah.
But it starts in just here and now, today, our family.
Yep, and supporting that. Well, we could read the document to you even further, because there's a lot there for sure. But read the letter to families. It's a good thing to kind of reconnoiter, especially as you might be getting started with your family, or maybe you've been married for a long time. Read this love letter from a now sainted Pope to you and to your family. One of the things that we should do, because we ain't saints yet, is pause for that part of the show that we like to call
the CU Pick of the Week.
That's right. It is our time for CU Pick of the Week. Kathleen, do you have a Pick of the Week?
I do have a Pick of the Week. Hello. I'm back with a vengeance, people.
Boy, is she. I'm just looking on the show notes here.
I know.
Yeah.
So I didn't become a social drinker. I really didn't become a drinker. Now, this is for our over 21 age, crew.
For all of you 15-year-olds listening to the podcast,
sorry.
Ask your parents.
Ask your parents.
Yeah.
I didn't become a social drinker really until like the last couple years.
You've had an opportunity to drink socially.
Yes, I've had social friends,
Okay,
and
all
there
right.
have been drinks, and so I'm
enjoyment.
trying to figure out what you drink. What I drink. And so, a lot of things I've stayed away from because they may be too girly or too hardcore. But this I found Strongbow Rosé Apple Hard Cider.
That's a lot of words.
It is such a girl drink,
I can
but
get
it
involved with
is
that.
fantastic. Okay, I try to have mature taste, so I'm also trying like rum and whiskey, like good stuff.
Yeah, sure.
This one, I could have this. I could come home from work. It's like having a glass of wine, I think, to some people. I'm like,
I'm just chuckling
let
over
me
here.
just pop a little top, have a little rosé hard cider, go to bed. There you go. It's so good. It's just
we
good.
don't advocate, making that your every evening.
No. But I mean,
That sounds delicious.
there it is. If you're of age, you should try it because it is.
So is it like a wine blended with an apple?
Yeah, it's kind of like, so it's got like the lightness and the sweetness of a rosé.
Okay.
And of course, like the
appleness of an apple.
And tartness of a hard cider. Yeah,
I like
okay.
that.
It's really good.
I'm a fan of that. It
Because
sounds
I'm
really
not
refreshing.
a big rosé fan.
Uh-huh.
Like I don't want to drink it by itself because it's just too.
It's too sweet.
Too sweet.
But you mix it with a hard cider.
Mix it with the hard cider, and there you go.
I suppose I'll have to mull that on my
Oh
own.
my.
Olivia.
Cut the camera away from him.
Kevin.
Cut his mic. Okay, so speaking of sweet things that hopefully aren't too sweet, my pick of the week is something called Smart Sweets.
No.
And I had never heard of this until a couple of days ago. I was like buying mints in the grocery store, and my eye went on this top shelf, and there's these they look like hipster candy. But I was reading about it. And it's like plant-based candy, and so they use like stevia and all natural ingredients. There's nothing artificial, but they have things like their version of Swedish Fish and like peach rings, like Sour Patch Kids and things like that. But it's a way they say is like their tagline is like to kick sugar, right?
Okay.
Because it's way
bring
less
it in
sugar
line.
than like normal.
Yeah.
So you can still eat, candy without having like so much sugar. Because I find that like every once in a while I have like a sugar urge, like
Yeah.
I just need candy, but I can't really eat it. And so I found this and I was like, well, this is a way to like eat candy without like making my blood sugar spike.
And going way overboard.
because it
and-
actually has a ton of fiber in it too, because of some of the things that they use. So it helps like to sustain your blood sugar. It doesn't like make your blood sugar spike.
Kathleen's like, I want this fibrous candy.
Yes, please.
Okay, that's not the best way to describe it. Just go try it. Just go try
Oh my
it.
goodness. I'm having a great time.
Y'all are too
Hey
much.
Jeff.
Y'all are too
Yo, Well, mine is low calorie. It's the Smithsonian Channel.
Oh, yeah.
Father Chris and I had been talking. I'm wanting to cut the cable for a while because it just kept getting expensive.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I found YouTube TV had most of the channels that we watched without having to pay extra premiums, and we didn't have any of the movie channels, my wife and I. But I like the classic movies. But I had to pay extra for that, or even an ESPN. You know, it was extra. Anyway, it's all included on YouTube, and I found that they had the Smithsonian Channel. A beautiful photography, great documentaries, and I'm enjoying it.
And also your local channels as well. A lot of people don't really know what to do when they want to cut the cable and use a streaming option. So I'm pretty happy with YouTube TV as well. Yeah. Alrighty, my pick of the week, I kind of stumbled across it. I forget what type of food I was looking for, but tasteatlas.com. Tasteatlas.com, what you can do is you go to Taste Atlas and you put in a locale, and it will tell you what the top foods of that area are, what they are, and where you can find them, the best place to get them. So like if you're looking in Louisiana, you'll see what the kind of the things that we eat, like boiled crawfish and beignets and bread pudding and things like that. Maybe some things that you don't even know about that are part of our atlas of eating. But maybe you want to know what to eat in Poland. So you can type in Poland. And it will actually take you through all of the different types of food in Poland. So tasteatlas.com is my pick of the week, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes. Cool. Yeah, all right. Well, Jeff, gosh, we've tasted the end of another episode. We're always grateful to those who support our show by their prayer, by their finances, all of that stuff. We're very grateful, huh?
Absolutely. And this week, the Catholic Underground is possible because of people like you. Join the growing number of undergrounders at CatholicUnderground.com/donate. And an important way to support us is to like us, heart us, star us, and share us on your social media platform of choice.
Yeah, I've noticed a couple of you folks have done that. You've gone into Apple Music, you've gone into Apple Podcasts now, and to Spotify, and you've kind of just scribbled down a little thank you. So thank you for those of you who have done that, and thank you for those of you who are gonna do that. Already, our panelists have been Kathleen Lee. She's the Faith Ninja, Hope Samurai. Hi-ya, Kathleen at KLee626 on Instagram. Thank you.
Anytime.
Yes, anytime. I like that. We'll hold you to it. Olivia Gulino is at the real OMG with dots where they're supposed to be. Thanks, Olivia.
Yeah, it's fine. Thank you.
Just check the show notes. Yeah. And our technical director is Jeff Blackwell. He's at Jeff Blackwellus on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks, Jeff.
Always a privilege, Father.
Our research assistant, the leader of the crew in the lab, is Jim Hayes, who, this is the last chance. He's the employee of the month.
Yep.
Outgoing.
Good for him.
Yeah. Our video and graphics director is Ed Ball, and you know me. I'm Father Chris. You can follow me on Instagram at Digital Catholic and Twitter too if you really want to. Yeah, you can. Sorry, I was thinking about my Twitter feed. There's not a whole lot on it, but yeah, whatever. We hope that we've helped you cut through the noise and find the still small voice. We're the Catholic Underground. We're Faith Gone Digital. We'll see you next time.
From the Catholic Underground.